Hey guys, what's up amigos? It's the Prodigy Maker show. I am back, Chris Lewit. After a brief hiatus, we missed the last couple weeks. I'm very sorry to our loyal fans and followers. I've been traveling, been up at Vermont at the club getting ready for summer camp, and also I've been I was in DC with my family for my daughter's spelling bee. She was in the Scripps National Spelling Bee. I don't know if some of you caught that on my social media, but she did very well. She didn't make the final cut, the last 50, but she placed, she had a good placing and she spelled all her words right. So it was really a blast. We were down in DC for the National Spelling Bee. So for 1 week, I was a professional spelling coach and not a tennis coach. I put up my rackets and I brought out the spelling lists, but now I'm back to tennis. I'm gearing up for the summer, gearing up for summer camp. Our academy is starting in just a couple weeks now, so I'm very excited that I will be going back to one of my favorite places in the world, in Vermont, in the mountains. I have a club there, and we run a high-performance program there for players from all over the country. Even some international players come there, so I'm very excited about that. Only for competitive players. It's not a recreational camp. Only for serious kids who are competing in tournaments and things like that. So I've got that on the horizon, and I've been working very hard to get ready. And I'm kind of excited to do this new time of the show. I know a lot of friends requested that I do a show where folks in Europe could tune in or log in live and maybe ask some questions, because normally we do this show on Sunday night, every Sunday night at 9:45 p.m. New York City time. I'm in New York City now, but today I thought we'd mix it up. This week we're doing the show Tuesday at 4. It's 4 p.m. here in New York City, so some folks across the pond in Europe can catch in and tune into the live broadcast, and maybe we can get a different conversation or some different perspectives on the game and on some of the topics at hand that way. But I did just want to talk about summer camp a little bit and summer academies, because I know many parents are looking to get into camp right now if they haven't already signed up, and I wanted to talk about what to look for in a high-performance program in the summer, and also talk about some of the perils and pitfalls that you may face in a summer camp environment. And I did want to touch on some of the variety shots of the game, the drop shot. I've been working on that a lot lately because I've been studying the Tony Nadal teaching system from Spain. He has a new online teaching system. It's really, I think it's an amazing course. It's very expensive. I didn't care. I paid for it anyway because I love learning about Spanish tennis. That's one of my passions. I wrote the book, The Secrets of Spanish Tennis, and anything related to Spanish tennis I'm sort of obsessed with. So I had to get Tony's course, and I've been studying all 3 levels. He has 3 levels to the course. He has a beginner level, an intermediate level, and an advanced level. And there's even a psychology, like a mental training module as well. But I just think there's a lot of quality content in the Tony Nadal system, the online course. I have no affiliation with them, so I don't know if any of you guys are interested, but if you haven't watched any of those modules, any of those lessons, I think they're really good, and they're professionally filmed, and they have a lot of content. They have a lot of different exercises from his system, and he talks a lot about his philosophy. So I highly recommend that. Again, I have no affiliation with them. I don't get a referral fee for that or anything. I just think it's really well done, and it's very hard to get access to the mind of a guy like Tony. He has historically been very secretive and very taciturn. It's a good spelling bee word. He's been very taciturn. He's been quiet. He doesn't like to share his system, and now for the first time he filmed a lot of it online. So anyway, my point is that in his system, he spends a lot of time developing the drop shot and the feel, and that's something I've always been a big fan of, and I've incorporated it into my own game, my own competitive game, and I've been working on it a lot with my players. So I also wanted to talk about that, and maybe if we have time to discuss the cousin or the sister or brother of the drop shot, which is the slice backhand, which I also think is very important to develop for high performance juniors. And in relation to that discussion, you have to talk about the volley. Like, where does the volley fit in? Should the volley take a higher priority than the drop shot, or should the volley be taught after the slice and drop shot? In what order should they be taught, and what priority? And how do they fit into building a serious player's game? So that's sort of the topics at hand. And as always, I take questions from the viewers around the world. So if you have a question about technique or about Spanish tennis, those are my two areas of expertise. I'm an expert technician. I build the hardware of young championship players. And I also am an expert on the Spanish way of training and teaching. So those are my two primary passions. If you have any question about competitive tennis, about junior development, especially high performance junior development, that's my field. That's what I do. I live that every day in the trenches. I'm a coach who works all the time on court. I'm not just writing and theorizing in the office. I am a hands-on coach. I work with all my players at my summer academy, which is coming up, and I work with all my players one-on-one or in groups here in New York City. So I'm an active coach. I'm not just someone who's theorizing, who's thinking about things in the abstract. I'm applying all these concepts and all of these principles I'm actively testing in the laboratory of the tennis court with my players. So let's see who's signing in here. I see a lot of old friends and some new faces. I want to say thank you to Jonathan Sedgemore, my good friend from across the pond. Probably getting closer to bedtime there, Jonathan, but thank you for waving. Thank you for tuning in. Igor Jevtik is watching. Thank you. See some new viewers on the program. It's really cool to have you guys. I really appreciate you taking the time to tune in and watch the show. Emma Dim is waving. Thank you, Emma. Gayatri Fernando is waving. Carlos Carrera is a regular on the program. What's up, Carlos? Thank you very much for watching. Ronnie Mayez is also another regular on the show. Thank you. Appreciate the support, guys. You guys are what makes this show great. If we can get a conversation going, that's great. If you just want to listen in to my thoughts and observe the conversation from a distance quietly, I know a lot of people like to do that as well. And I would like to remind all the viewers and listeners that this show is archived and replayed as a podcast on all your favorite podcasting platforms like iTunes and Stitcher and SoundCloud and many others, Spotify. So you can get this show as a podcast, and you can listen to it when you're busy. I love to listen to podcasts when I'm working out, for example, when I'm running or in the gym. And you can, of course, watch the show on Facebook. And we archive all the shows at our YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/Chris Lewit. youtube.com/Chris Lewit. So let's kind of dig into the program a little bit. Summer camp, the biggest thing that I would watch out for, if I was a parent and I'm looking at summer academies, if I have a high performance player, is I want to make sure that my kid is getting a lot of attention. What happens many times is parents put too much trust in the managers and the directors and the coaches of a camp or an academy, and they just sort of drop off their kid. And that takes a lot of trust. I would say that I would almost never do that unless you have a personal relationship with the coach, with the head coach, and you really know that your son or daughter is going to be treated well and get a lot of attention. I think the smartest parents are usually on site at any academy, not just for the summertime, but maybe particularly in the summertime, because unfortunately what happens with summer programs is a lot of academies and clubs, they make the bulk of their money in the summertime. So they bring in a lot of volume, they bring in sometimes hundreds of players, and it's a way for them to sort of boost their bottom line, their profits. And I think that's very dangerous. If you're looking for a high quality summer experience, it's very dangerous if your son or daughter gets trapped, if your player gets trapped in a place like that, that has an influx, a deluge of hundreds of players coming in, and they don't know anyone, they don't have a personal relationship with anyone on the staff there, you're just not going to be able to get a high quality experience. It's very easy to get lost in the shuffle, to get lost down in the cracks, to slip through the cracks, and your player will probably have a subpar experience. So you just got to watch out for places that are doing really large numbers, where they may be forced to put too many players on a court. I recommend you look for a summer camp and an academy in general. Some of these principles go for any academy year-round, but particularly in the summer, that you look for an academy that puts 2 or 3 players per court. I prefer that. Now, some places get away with 4. I prefer the Spanish way, which is 2 and sometimes 3, unless they're doing something with doubles, like a doubles exercise or something like that. But the best academies in Spain, they keep to a very strict 2-player per court and coach ratio. So every group, it's not really a group, it's like a semi-private, 2 players per court. If you can find something quality like that in the summer, it's unbelievable. Over there in Europe, one of my favorite places in summer, just off the top of my head, they maintain a very strict ratio, is Barcelona Total Tennis, BTT. Again, I have no relationship with them other than we are friends, and I visited and trained there many times, but that's one example of a place that is very proud and very strict about their ratio, because they believe it keeps the quality high. Another one is Bruguera Academy in Spain. They do a really awesome job. And in some summers, they have gone a little over the numbers, but of summers late, they've maintained a very good ratio, usually 2 players per court and coach, which is unbelievable quality in the summertime. And there are, those are 2 off the top of my head that I really admire for keeping a good ratio. And you have to just be careful, guys. Be careful of some of the big names. I'm not going to name names right here, but you know who I'm talking about. The real big commercial names, maybe with some famous players at the helm, who are maybe not there, but they have their name on the marquee. And you just have to be careful. Those are the places that bring in big numbers, where it's very easy for your kid to get lost in the shuffle. Another thing is, with camps or academies in general, is the big name coach, the guru, the top dog, the El Jefe, the boss, the legend, whoever it is who's on the marquee, the big name. Is that person actually there in the summer or any time? Because a lot of them are not, or they're there very infrequently, they're on site very infrequently. And does that person actually work with all of the players who come in? And usually the answer is no. Those big name gurus, they sometimes take the summer off. They may be traveling with players. They may be traveling with professional players or ITF juniors. And they may be there very infrequently. So, what's the point of that? If you pay a lot of money for somebody's name, I don't think you're getting much out of that deal. So it's very exciting if you can get access to a great tennis mind, to a legend, but that legend has to be there, and they have to be willing to work with your player. That's the other thing. You get sometimes the famous coach, the really high-level coach, the legend is there, but he or she only works with the best juniors at the academy, so the top-ranked kids. So they don't spend any time with the beginning tournament players, or the beginners who are coming up, the young ones, the U10 players. And I think that's a shame, because in my opinion, sometimes the little ones need even more guidance, and it's more critical that they get professional instruction than the older ones. Of course, it's important for all the ages, but the little ones oftentimes get the youngest coaches, and I think that's a mistake at many summer camps and at many academies in general. The young ones, and I specialize in young player development. I work with a lot of prodigies. The show is called Prodigy Maker, and that is my brand. And I'm very proud that I work with many young children, as young as 4 or 5 years old, and some of them are just starting out their tennis journey, if not their competitive tennis journey. I love to shape those little guys and girls. That is my passion as a tennis coach. But I know that many top coaches don't do that. They look for older players who are transitional pros. They look for players who are already formed, and they don't specialize in the hardware, in building the technique, the technical foundation of those little superstars, those little kids. And you have to know what you need. So another thing for summer camp and academies is, for example, if you have a very well-formed player who has a high ranking or a high UTR, national ranking or an international ranking, then you may not need a great technical coach. That player probably has excellent technique, and they need a lot of match play. They need an environment that's maybe a little larger, with more variety of players. Like the legend Jose Higueras says, the Spanish legendary coach Jose Higueras, he says, you need to have a really good diet at that level. So your nutrition as a player is what your match play. The players that you practice and play with, that's your diet. And you have to have a variety in your diet, he says, to be healthy and to grow as a tennis player. And I think he's right. So when you have a very well-formed player who's technically sound, they don't need so much instruction. They don't need a lot of technical advice or cues. They need a lot of match play. They need strong, challenging competition, strong practice partners. And that comes usually at a slightly bigger academy. So in that case, bigger is probably a little better for those types of players because they're well-formed. And they need a variety of challenging opponents. On the other hand, if you have a player who is younger, who still needs technical work or lots of footwork, or they're working on specifics, then I think a smaller academy in general is probably a better fit, just as a general rule. The other thing is you got to know your player and know your player's personality. Some kids don't do well in a big environment. They may be reserved, they may not be as social, and they would thrive better in a smaller camp setting. For example, my camp, my high performance camp, we have maximum 25 players a week. So that's pretty small on the spectrum of summer camps. And the reason why we do that is because I work with all the players myself. I have a team of coaches, but I try to spend time each day and each week with all the kids, like literally, personally on court. And also I want to get to know all the kids personally, myself. And it's just impossible. If I go bigger than that, it would be impossible to get to know every player. It would be more like a numbers game. I never liked doing that. And so that's an example of a small academy where you can get a lot of personal attention and connection with the head coach. And then some academies run into the hundreds per week. They could have 100 students, 200 students coming in. And that's a massive influx of players, and it can be very difficult to manage all those players, the different personalities and the desires and whims of those players, and to make them all happy and to give them all what they need in an individualized way. But what I'm saying is, when they're well formed, okay, you want to say hello? Because I'm on the show. This is my family. This is the super speller I was talking about. Say hello. And this is my superstar runner here, who's got a big race tomorrow, and I told him he has to rest. Hello. And you're going to rest, right? You're not going to go running right now, right?
I'm going to go running.
Then you're not going to get a PR tomorrow. You're not going to get your best race tomorrow if you go running. It's up to you, buddy. Do you want to leave everyone in the dust tomorrow, or do you want to, be sucking wind?
What?
Legs are going to be tired. You're going to be a little breathing heavy because you need the rest today.
Okay, I'll go play Manhunt.
Don't play Manhunt. Manhunt is a game where he runs around the neighborhood chasing his friends. I say you need to rest. We have a big race tomorrow.
Great for practice, but
All right. Guys, it's great to see you. I'll be down. We're going to have a family... Thank you, honey. We're going to have family time after I finish this show.
Bye.
I'm surprised I got any quiet time up here. I'm trying to hide from my kids. So, Sky, I did want to say, Sky, congratulations on your spelling bee. Awesome. It's my super speller there. Isaiah, if I come down and find out you've been running around, I'm going to be upset. You can't run around. You have a race tomorrow.
You never taught.
You have a big race. It's the biggest race of the year.
I'm not gonna run that much.
You're being stupid. All right, we're talking about camp. All right, so basically you got your big camps, your small camps. You want to make sure you get personal attention from the head honcho, the guru, you know. Make sure that person is actually going to work with your kid. The other thing I don't like is, and I'm not going to name names, I don't like when you pay for a camp and then you find out that you have to pay like $300, $400 an hour just to get a glance from the head guy. You know, I don't think that's really cool. If you pay for a camp with someone's name on it, let's say my name, you pay for my name with camp, and you come to camp, I think you should get some time with me because my name's on the program and I want to ensure the quality. So that's kind of how I feel about it personally. I don't like when you sign up for a camp and then you have to buy really expensive add-ons. You know, I don't think that's right. And I know that one of my mentors in Spain, Luis Bruguera, is really big on that point too. He's always told me that he hates that practice where academies do that in the summer, especially in the summertime. But right. So I would mention one other thing about camps, and I advise parents all the time about what to look for. But you know, the physical side. If you go to a summer camp, you know that's a prime time to get stronger, faster, to work on injury prevention, and you need a professional trainer to do that. Many academies sort of have a watered down approach to fitness in the summer. I've noticed that at many camps that I've visited, even some of the best academies in the world, they don't take the fitness seriously. Why? Well, they don't want to get injuries. They don't want...
Sorry to bother you, but Isaiah.
Ruby, I'm doing a live show.
Isaiah just ran out to play manhunt with his new shoes on. Hi.
Hello. You want to sing a song for everyone? You want to sing one line? You want to sing a line?
No.
This is, come here. Come give me a hug. This is my little one. Her name is Ruby. She has a beautiful singing voice. And sometimes she gets a little grumpy, but we're working on that. And someday she would like to be on stage. We would like to win the singing show. Which one did we see? The Voice. Or American Idol. I don't know. She wants to be maybe a singer.
America's Got Talent.
Do you want to play tennis maybe?
No.
No, none of my kids like tennis. Isn't that weird? Tennis is my whole life and my kids aren't into it. Well, we have one more. We have a baby coming. So I have a chance with the last baby. We'll see.
Daddy.
Yeah.
Isaiah just went out to play manhunt after he said not to, and he's using his new shoes.
Ruby's reporting to me that Isaiah has gone outside to play manhunt, which is a game where he runs around the neighborhood and sometimes almost gets hit by cars.
He's scootering, but I don't know if he's going to play manhunt.
He is.
All right.
Right now he's scootering.
We may have to end this program short, cut it short so I can go out and strangle my kid.
Not literally.
Not literally. No, I'm just kidding. We won't cut the show short. We're going to stay on. But before I was interrupted, we were talking about camp, physical training. You need a professional trainer. What? What is it?
Isaiah, he's gonna play manhunt and told him not to.
All right, I'll be down. When the show's over, I'm going to go wring his neck. All right,
Bye.
love you. Thank you for talking so sweetly to us. All right, if you have any questions about camp, let me know. Try to avoid the places that are jammed. Try to avoid the places that are big name only, who's never around. Try to avoid places where the fitness is watered down and unprofessional. You know, that kind of thing. Some places they bring in so many kids, they're racking up the money, and now you got a lot of players who are not that serious, so they don't want the kids to get injured, so they water down the fitness. They go to the pool and swim for fitness, or they play water polo, or just play some fun and games. It's not really serious, like I think the summer camp is such an opportunity to get better. A lot of the kids don't have school in the summer. They don't have a lot of extracurricular work or academic work, so they can really push their tennis hard and improve their fitness as well as their tennis. It should be used efficiently, and the time should be maximized in the summer. And when you sign up for a camp that's too jammed with players, or that's got some of those other defects that I mentioned, you don't maximize your players' improvement. So those are some thoughts on camp. If you have any additional questions about that, I answer camp questions all the time, obviously, because I run a camp, and parents are usually trying to pick my brain about what they're looking for. And I recommend a lot of camps. I recommend a lot of academies. I field emails every week from parents looking for setups for their kid in Spain, for example, because I'm known as an expert on Spanish tennis, and I visited all the academies in Spain. So this is a territory that I'm very familiar with, recommending camps and academies. So moving on to a topic near and dear to my heart is the drop shot. And the way I see it for junior development, I see the drop shot as a cousin or a sibling to the volley and the slice backhand. To me, they're similar skills. They use a similar grip structure, usually a universal grip like a continental, and they usually all have backspin. For example, they use backspin, and they have similar motoric movements. So biomechanically, they're typically high to low, and you're trying to cut down on the ball either aggressively or subtly to make the ball stop or skid. So to me, they're all related movements, and I try to teach them as a package, But I think for me, one of the most important things is having that drop shot weapon to attack a player who doesn't like to come forward. There are many players in junior tennis. I work with a lot of kids who are young, who are very comfortable moving laterally, and if a player can expose them to a short ball, then they become quite uncomfortable, and they don't feel they feel awkward up there, and they're vulnerable as they move forward. But if your player doesn't have a good drop shot, then they can't exploit that, and they don't have a way to bring the player in and to show that vulnerability, to reveal that vulnerability. So I work on this a lot with my players. There's a lot of exercises in the Tony Nadal system that he uses to develop the feel. He likes to work on the acceleration, so the big forehand weapon with power, and then the deceleration, working on the drop shot, the soft shot that brings an opponent in. And I'm a big believer in that. I think in many ways, when a kid is young, the drop shot is more important and more powerful than the volley. I'm sure some of you might disagree. You're welcome to post a comment or a question about that if you do disagree. But I know here in the US that many coaches teach the volley first as opposed to the drop shot or slice backhand. And I think that's fine. If you want to teach the volley, that's cool. I like to teach the volley too. But I like to tell my players that coming to net is not always as important as bringing someone to net. And when I was a kid, I never ever even thought of that. It never occurred to me to try to bring my opponent forward. I always tried to move forward myself. And so I try not to fall into that trap when I'm coaching my players. I want them to move forward if they can. If they can finish at the net, that's fantastic. And I wanted them to have a good volley base. But as far as the tactical idea of bringing someone in, I want them to consider that as a very reliable and powerful strategy against certain types of players. So that means they're going to have to use their intelligence. They're going to have to use their matchcraft and their understanding of the game to try to figure out if the drop shot will be viable and will be successful against whoever's across the net from them. So it takes some tactical training as well as, of course, technical training. So We're doing an article series with John Yandel of tennisplayer.net that's coming up this month. John Yandel is a very well-known videographer and magazine publisher, and he's coming from California to my camp in Vermont. And we're going to be filming a number of articles, video articles, and one of the articles will be on the drop shot. So I'm very excited to share with all the viewers and the readers some of those exercises. A lot of them are from Spain. And also sort of my technical approach to developing the drop shot in young kids. I mean, you can start teaching that very young, under 10. And certainly I think, I'm amazed that coaches spend so much time on the volley at a young age. Of course, you want a well-rounded player who can volley and finish at the net. But for me, the drop shot is much more valuable at a young age, especially. As you get older and you have more power, you have more weapons, then the movement forward makes sense. You also are bigger and taller with a longer wingspan. And so as an older player, the net becomes better percentage play because you're bigger, you hit harder, and you can cover the net well. But when you're little, it's very easy to throw a lob over your head. It's very easy to pass you because you don't have a long reach, for one. And you're not able to hit as powerfully and to hurt your opponent as well to make that movement forward. In juniors, we see a lot of kids who hit moon balls, who play consistently from deep in the court. And the drop shot can be a devastating strategy against those types of players. A very important shot skill to have when you play a kid who's a grinder, who hangs back in the baseline and plays a consistent game like a wall. Some people call them a pusher. Drop shot is a very powerful weapon against the pusher. I have a saying that the drop shot is the most powerful shot that's not powerful. And when you play someone who loves to move left and right and you start bringing them in, you start sucking them into the net like a magnet, and then you play a lob over their head, it's really fantastic. Another thing with young kids is there's a saying here in the U.S. that the overhead is the worst shot in junior tennis. So I tell my players that the overhead, most kids don't hit a very good overhead. They don't have a great smash. And what's the best way to exploit that? Well, you got to have a good drop shot to bring them in. If you can bring your opponent in, then you can start lobbing them and make them hit that shot that they don't like up above their shoulders, the smash or the overhead. And I love that strategy. It works really well. It can work at all levels and all ages, but particularly when kids are young, because kids are not very tall and they don't practice their overhead very much. Most juniors have very poor smashes. So there again, the drop shot becomes a critical element in a game plan, in a tactical game plan. It's really, in some ways, shocking to me that more junior development coaches don't work on the drop shot. It's amazing. Because when you think about it in the tactical context, you think about it strategically, how essential it can be to winning at the young level, 10 and under, 12 and under, 14 and under. It's an essential shot to have in order to exploit the baseliner's vulnerability. So in that respect, I think we should teach it more. I think you can teach it in concert with the volley. I like to teach them both together, in some ways in harmony. And I try to explain to my students that, look, sometimes when you play a match, you want to bring your opponent in, right? And sometimes in a match, you want to go in. And it depends. And I think that's a very refreshing take on it. And I was never taught that when I was a kid, but I definitely try to get that message across to all of my tournament players and all of my young students who I'm mentoring. I say, look, you need both. And both of them there are two sides to a sword. And they both cut very well. You just have to know when to use it and who your opponent is and whether it's going to affect them or not. If you're playing a kid who has an amazing serve and volley game, loves to attack, you might not want to bring them into the net as much because they obviously love it up there. But if you play a grinder or a pusher who's standing 6-10 feet behind the baseline, grinding moon balls, just, hitting a lot of fluff, pushing the ball, those kinds of players, they only come to net to shake hands typically. So the drop shot against that type of kid can be tremendously effective, and it can really disrupt their game. It can change the whole rhythm of a match. Another thing, the drop shot for me is probably the most powerful tool for psychological warfare. And that's another saying that I have that I use a lot with all of my students when I'm on the court. I say the drop shot is the greatest tool for psychological warfare, probably next to cheating. So a corollary of that would be the drop shot is the best legal means of messing with your opponent's psychology. To cheat is obviously illegal. It's extremely disruptive. Players cheat a lot because it disturbs, sometimes destroys their opponent's mental state. It is it's amazing in that way. I know it's illegal and I don't advocate that, but it's incredible how even one bad line call or mixing up of the score intentionally or even unintentionally can take away a player's flow and focus. And the drop shot is a legal tool to do that. The drop shot is so annoying and so disturbing and disruptive to the rhythm of a point that it can drive players bananas, can drive players nuts. And so for that reason too, when you have young kids who are still developing emotionally, many young tournament players do not have a great emotional control. They haven't learned to focus as well as their older counterparts. And the drop shot is deadly in the sense that it can really get under a kid's skin, can ruffle feathers. It can cause a lot of distress on the other side of the net. Players who are fragile, God forbid you have a player on the other side who's a bit fragile mentally. If you start drop shotting them, if you drop shot them and throw up a high lob and they miss the smash in the net, the player's going to lose it. They're going to blow up, and you may have turned the whole tide of the match psychologically. So for me, for these many reasons, I think the drop shot is arguably more important. I would say more important than the volley to teach at a young age. I would say you want to teach them both. But I actually believe in overweighting the drop shot a little more than the volley at young ages. And if my players show an aptitude for the net and they like to come in, they have a personality that is aggressive and they like to attack. As I start to see that as the years go by, 11, 12, 13, 14, as you get to know your player, and you will know if that player is going to have a real aggressive all-court game, and then you can start overweighting the net. For example, if you have some juniors they love to play doubles, and they show some initial success up there, that's an indicator that you can really harness and hone the net game of those kids. And you will see that some players are more temperamentally defensive or conservative. And those players, it may make sense for them to have a decent volley, a solid volley, but it doesn't need to be an incredible weapon. They don't need to be as adept at the net as a player who's going to go there a lot more. So it's important as a coach to be in tune with your player, to understand their personality, the way they're wired, and to overweight or underweight what you're working on in practice depending on their personality. So the more conservative players, they tend to stay back more. They maybe don't need to volley as well as the guy who's going to rush and crush and attack at all moments. Like you have your Federers and your Nadals. And does Nadal have a good net game? Yeah, absolutely. And it's important that he does have a complete game up there. But he's not going to make as many entries as a guy like Federer, who is really even more gifted at the net than than most guys on tour. So those are the sort of the breakdowns that I see. And another thing is that personality-wise, not every kid is wired to go to the net, and not every kid is wired to drop shot. So if it takes a creative kid to explore the geometry of the court, and I think you can foster that as well. It doesn't always need to be something that's natural in a player, something that's innate. Sometimes with a young kid, like let's say you have a kid 6, 7, 8, or 9, you can encourage the creativity in that young player. You can encourage them to see the full geometry of the court, to explore the service boxes, as I often say. You know, how many players do you see who explore the service boxes with their shots? Do they play sharp angles? Short. Do they play drop shot? Do they play short slice in the service box? Not many. The creative ones do. They realize that deep shots are not the only way to play in tennis. As the great Pato Alvarez from Spain says, a short shot is worth as much as a deep one. An angle is worth as much as a power winner. A soft shot down the middle can be as good as a hard shot to the corner. This is quoting directly from the legendary Pato Alvarez from Spain. And I think he's right. And I think many times young players don't get that message from their development team, from their coaches, or from the club or academy where they're training. And I think that's a shame, because most kids, that vision and that geometric creativity can be fostered. It can be encouraged and developed. It can flourish in the right environment, and it can also be squashed. So when you have coaches who are teaching a very sterile, very rigid, strict method, and they teach the players to hit hard, sometimes flat, which I'm not a big fan of, and deep, you know, when that is the only diet that those players are eating, then I don't think it's the healthiest environment for a young kid. When you have an environment, a coaching environment, an academy, where the players are encouraged to see the full geometry of the court, to see the service boxes, not just the big box where you hit deep, but also the short boxes. And they're encouraged to experiment with different spins, and with drop shot, and with volley too, to move in and volley. I think when you have an environment like that fosters creativity, slice backhand is another that we were going to touch on today if we have time. You know, slice backhand is another way to explore the short service boxes. Slice backhand is another way to change the rhythm of a point. You want to encourage players to not only to play with the depths, sometimes play deep, sometimes short, to play with the full angles of the court, but also to play with different spins of the court on the court as well. So spins with the ball. And I think it's just a shame where if you have a developmental system that doesn't allow or foster some of that creativity. Now, that being said, some young kids, they're not creative souls. They're not artists, you know, they're not artistes. They're not going to do it. And I think it's important also to recognize who you got in front of you. If you have a little kid who's not an artist, if you have a little kid who's not a magician, it's all your time trying to get them to play magically, trying to get them to be an artist, because only some kids have that skill. So it's a double-edged sword, guys. It can cut both ways. You want to have an environment that is fostering creativity, but also when you have a personality in front of you who's not that creative, I mean, yeah, develops a little bit of variety, but don't overdo it, because if you try to teach too much variety to a kid who's not really into it, it's a waste of time. It's actually going to backfire. And I know some top coaches in Spain who I've discussed this subject with a lot, and they said to me, you know, yeah, we want a complete game, we want variety, but not at the expense of being solid and organized. And sometimes when you have a system that is too freewheeling, that's too creative and too flexible, you know, that does not doesn't have enough structure, some kids get lost in a system like that, and learning-wise, in terms of the way they learn and the way they develop. So, for example, some kids won't find a good organization or order in their game if they're constantly being asked to drop shot all the time, or if you constantly ask them to slice a lot, but they struggle with that and they don't really have the vision or the creativity to use a slice. I'm talking mentally, the way their brain's wired. Not physically, because physically anyone can learn a slice. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying I'm talking about the mind and their inclination to be creative and artistic. And if a player is not really wired that way on the spectrum, if they're way over on the side where they play maybe a little dull and boring and they're very concrete-minded kids, then you telling them to drop shot all the time or do this or that or different, it's just gonna mess with their mind. They're not gonna feel comfortable and they won't find a good rhythm in their game. They won't find order in their game. So I believe at the same time, I just throw you guys a caveat and say that while you want to get that creativity, you want to get a complete game and different variety and tools like that, you have to be careful, because some kids won't respond to that and they will actually get a little bit lost in all that creativity. They will get lost in that variety. And for those kids, they benefit more from order and organization and structure and more rules to how they should play. Simple strategies with a little bit less creative decision making. And you'll just have to figure out who you got in front of you. Some boys and girls will be on the one end of the spectrum, and some boys and girls will be on the other, and some will be in the middle. And I guess what I'm arguing is that the ones that are kind of in the middle, they can flourish and they can develop some of those aspects. The ones that are way over on the non-creative side, I'm not sure the best name for those types of kids, but the kids who are really pretty, they're concrete and direct. They want to play a very simple, direct way, an uncomplicated way. They don't want to. There's not a lot of nuance to their game. Those types of kids, for better or for worse, they're going to play their best tennis with order. And if you give them too much variety, you encourage too much creativity, like some coaches are obsessed with that. Like, oh, you got to be complete and creative. You will actually create a lot of disharmony and disorder in those players' minds. So you have to just be careful. I give you a caveat regarding that. Let's see, maybe we can touch on the slice a little bit if we have time. I see my buddy Pablo Nombella is waving. Thank you. Sophia Blano is watching. Andy Dowsett is waving. Got some regulars on the show. Guys, thanks for supporting the show on a Tuesday afternoon. I guess for some of you, if you're across the pond, it's Tuesday evening. 5 or 6 hours ahead, most likely. So that would be like 9 or 10 at night. I see Elizabeth Morel is waving. A lot of regulars on the show, loyal supporters of the program. Thank you, guys. I'm sorry that I missed the last 2 weeks. It's been a busy 2 weeks, and I apologize, but we'll get back on track here. We're also going to be getting back on track with my live show. It's called Prodigy Maker Live. We do on-court filming live of my lessons. So we go to my private lesson court and we film everything I'm doing with my players, which is, I think, it's the coolest show on the internet, tennis-wise, to be honest with you. Maybe I'm a little biased, but I don't know anyone else who's doing that. It's filming all their lessons live with good sound quality and good camera work. Sometimes. When we get it right, we have good sound and good camera work. And then putting that for free online for everyone to enjoy. So we do that every week. That's called the Prodigy Maker Live. And that's also archived. All those shows are archived on my YouTube channel. Remember, it's youtube.com/Chris Lewit. And we're in our second season of that. So we have some 30 episodes from season 1. And now in season 2, we're starting out and we're up in the ante in terms of our technology. We're working on getting multiple camera live feed going through Facebook. I think I may start broadcasting that live show on Facebook or Instagram. And guess what? if I do that, you can watch along and actually ask questions during the middle of the lesson. Like when we have a break, I can field questions from you guys. So I think that's super cool. And I don't know anyone else who's doing that on the internet, but I'm excited to offer that to you guys. I'm a big believer in technology. I'm a big believer in online learning. As some of you may know, I have an online tennis academy. It's called clta.teachable.com. If you go to CLTA, that's the Chris Lewit Tennis Academy.teachable.com, you can learn all about my method online. We have courses available there. We have a lot of free instructional videos on our YouTube channel, and we have paid programs, paid courses on the Teachable site, clta.teachable.com. We call it the only online Spanish tennis academy, and I'm quite proud of that. And we're building out new courses every month or so, and I'm excited to have students from all over the world who are learning with me online. And some of them are able to get to New York or Vermont, and some of them are too far away, and that way I can help more and more people. I especially love helping young children and their parents. So this is kind of cool because tonight I see a lot of waves and viewers who I don't know, and that means we're reaching a new audience, and that's kind of exciting for me, guys. Thank you for the thumbs up. Appreciate it. I see some old names, old friends, and I see some new friends. Some old amigos and some new amigos. Very cool. I think I see some Spanish names here. Very nice. We may have to do this time again, like an afternoon time, so we can get some different viewers on. Maybe it's best to mix up the times a little bit so that we can get, I know people are working a lot of times. People are working, or on Sunday night people are sleeping and they cannot watch the broadcast. But at least we have the replays for everyone. All right, I'd like to just touch on the slice really quick, and then we'll wrap this up because I got to go for an afternoon with my kids. We're going to go to the playground and have a family evening together. The slice is, to me, part of the package. It's part of the drop shot, very similar to the drop shot mechanically. And I like to teach those in concert. The drop shot and the slice, I like to teach those together along with the volley. So let's say if you're teaching a backhand drop shot, you can also teach a backhand slice and the backhand volley all in a similar way. You can tell the players that, hey, look, these shots are part of the same family. They're cousins or they're siblings, as I like to say. They're like brothers and sisters. And you can use these tools in different ways. The slice backhand, I don't think it should be taught before a good topspin, whether it's a two-hander or one-hander or a forehand. As some of you know, I'm really into dual forehand work, ambidextrous play. But whatever you want to build on the backhand side, I think the slice should come secondarily to that. You should show some order and some solidness with the topspin stroke before you start playing around too much with the slice. But once you have a good order and a good organization with the topspin, I think you should really start to work the slice. I have lots of games that I use, some of them from Spain, some of them from Tony Nadal, some from Jose Higueras, games that I love to use to foster the use of the slice and to build creativity in my players. So I think once the technique is sound, I like building the technique, and I have a lot of videos online about how to build a good slice backhand. Once you have the basic technique, I think the key is to get kids to use it, because there are many young players, even highly ranked players, who they never slice. But if you see them in practice, they have a good slice. But in a match or a tournament, they don't really use it because they don't feel comfortable with the rhythm of it. They're not confident in the shot. They will use it on a big point under pressure. So I think once you have the technical base with the slice, if you daily and weekly play games, different tactical games, points with your players that incorporate the slice backhand, then they will slowly but surely become comfortable using it when it counts. But I think the mistake is that coaches will drill the slice backhand and they won't really take the next step, which is to create an environment where the players they basically have to use the slice in points and under pressure, because you don't you don't, I say it to the kids a lot, you don't really have a slice unless you're willing to use it under pressure. You don't really have it. You have a slice, but you don't really own that slice until you're willing to use it with equal facility and with equal aplomb, with equal confidence as your two-hander or one-hander topspin in a point situation. So that means if it's break point or set point and the ball is coming to your backhand, that you have no doubt, you have no insecurity about whether to slice or hit topspin. Because if you have even one iota of insecurity, of doubt, you will choose the topspin. And that's what happens in junior tennis. So many players, they have a slice, but the level of the slice is not on par with their drive. And so when push comes to shove and it's an important moment in the match, what are they going to do? They're going to choose to drive the ball because they know that the slice is maybe a touch less consistent, or they're not as confident in that shot. So to me, it's one thing to teach a slice. It's another thing to develop a junior, a young kid, to the point where they actually will use that shot in a big moment. And so that's the ultimate goal. That's the job of the coach. That's the job of the teaching environment, the club environment, or the academy system, is to create players who are willing to slice when it counts. They don't just have it locked up in the chest for a rainy day, or they don't just have it in practice. And that's one of the most difficult things to do, I think, with the slice. Also difficult to do that with the volley. Some players are allergic to going to net, and you have to create a lot of tactical games that encourage them to move forward. And the same with the drop shot. Some kids have a very good technical drop shot, because these are all in the same family of shots, in my opinion. They're variety shots. They are slice varieties of. They're in the family of slice shots. They are in the family of short shots many times. Volley can be short. Drop shot should be short, and the slice can be very short. And they have to be taught. They have to be fostered. They have to be encouraged. And the only way to do that is I think the best way to do that is with games. With games and play. And there's different parameters that you can create so that the players have to use their slice in points. So just as a quick example, there's a game that I love so much from Jose Higueras. And anyone who's been to my academy or taken lessons with me or groups, they know we love to play this game, slice and forehand, where you're allowed to slice the ball and play a normal forehand. And we play points like that, like game to 11 or game to 15 out of the hand. And sometimes we'll do that for 15, 20 minutes at the beginning of a practice, at the beginning of a session, or we might do it to wrap up a session. And we try to do that regularly. And one of the goals that I have is that the kids will become comfortable actually playing points with the one-handed slice backhand. And it's a beautiful game, and it's very simple, and it works. And not only does it work, but it's so much fun. The kids just love it. They enjoy it. It's competitive. And I first learned that from Jose Higueras, who is a Spanish coach who has been living in the U.S. for over 25 years now, or maybe longer, and he has recently been in charge of the USTA, so he has been the head of coaching for the USTA. I've studied with him for a long time, and he's been a great mentor to me. I've learned so much from Jose, and this is one of the things I learned from him, that for all of the top American kids, the girls and the boys, he would have them play this simple game. There's some other games you can do as well, but this simple game, he would have them compete at the start of every session, in the morning or after lunch, before the afternoon session. And the players loved it, but I don't think they realized that the game was actually really developing their decision-making and their confidence using the slice during points. So it's called Slice and Forehand. I'll have to put up a video. I don't know if we have a video on YouTube of that. It might be in one of our courses at the clta.teachable.com site. But I know that's one game that is a great example of something simple, fun, and competitive, and that will actually work. You'll actually succeed in convincing players to use the slice because so many players are reluctant to do it. And you can create games. I've created games like that for the volley and for the drop shot as well. We have a number of really exciting and cool games with the drop shot. I think we have some really original games that I've developed. I've never seen them anywhere. Some of them I've picked up from Spain, but a lot of them I've just sort of, experimented with my players and my team. And we have some really cool exercises with the drop shot and games with the drop shot that are super fun. And over time, they do the same thing. They brainwash a kid into thinking that, hey, this shot, I can use it. This shot works. I'm willing to do this shot under pressure. And that's the key, because you don't really own any of these shots. The slice, the drop shot, the volley, you don't really own them until you're willing to do it in the big moment. All right, guys, let me know if you have any questions on any of these subjects, if you thought what I was saying was crazy, or if you enjoyed. I appreciate any comments. What I usually do is I check the comments during the week, and I answer all the comments as best I can. So if you have a question that you think of and you didn't get a chance to ask it live, just post it in the, go to the post, the video post in Facebook, and leave a comment or leave a question, and I will do my best to answer in a timely fashion. Also, I want to thank you all for supporting the program. We're in our second season, and it's been great getting to know everyone. It's one of my highlights during the week is to share my ideas about the game and high performance and also learn from you guys. So I really appreciate you supporting the show. Please tell your friends, give us a thumbs up, keep tuning in and waving. And I think especially let people who are into high performance know that there is a broadcast, a weekly show that they can tune into. They can ask questions, they can get guidance, and they can also share ideas in a smart community. I think we have a very intelligent audience on this program, and I strive for that. I strive for an intelligent conversation. Sometimes we have intelligent debates, and we are like a family. I appreciate you guys tuning in and supporting the program. So have a great day. I'm not going to say night. Maybe where you are it's night. Have a great week on the court. We will be doing a live show this weekend. Be ready for that. I think I might try to put it on Facebook, guys. I'm kind of excited to try it, so you can tune in live on my teaching court this weekend. It's going to be awesome. You can ask questions live, and I'll try to make the comments nice. Try not to flame me and my students during the live show, okay, guys? We'll probably do that on, I'm thinking Saturday. I'll let you guys know. I think we're going to do the live on court show Facebook broadcast Saturday, if not Sunday. I'll let you guys know. Thank you for tuning in. Thanks for waving. I will see you guys next week. Adios.